Now, on to today's first session, an insightful proprietary study PromaxBDA has commissioned in conjunction with Magid. This ongoing viewer analysis will help to define the new best practices to connect and engage with local TV audiences. Please welcome Jim Thomas and Dick Haynes from Magid.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Jim.
And I'm Dick.
How's everybody doing this morning? Steve, I didn't hear quite the resounding hello from...
There you go. All right. This is excellent. I tell you...
There we go.
I don't know about you, but this is okay. This room is okay. It's much like the rooms I present most of my research in. Yeah. I could get used to this.
You all sat there with Dick in those crowded conference rooms, right? So it is great to be with you this morning, and we think we have some really terrific information. Questions that I asked when I sat in your chairs, because it's really about, with the proliferation of media out there, lots of opportunities for viewers and users to check in, check out. When we talked to Promax and we said, when we bring this study, what we wanted to answer are some of the key questions. Across all media, how impactful are those marketing messages? Different styles, different tones, different approaches. You all debate them all the time in your stations. We research them all the time, whether it's commercials or promos. And so now it's on to Facebook posts and other digital media that really what we tried to do, and Dick has developed a way to level the playing field and get the opinions of viewers to understand how they're using those various media platforms to tune in to your late local news. And as we developed it, one of the things that we thought, as you're thinking about what am I going to learn here at Promax this week, what am I going to do? Well, our goal first and foremost was that maybe when you'd arrive back on Monday, your GM would say, I think I got a genius on my hands, so that Promax must be worth the investment. So on with the show. Tell you a little bit about the background of how we got there.
I think we will start with why we did this thing, why we did the whole research project. And it's pretty simple. We want to find out how to motivate people, particularly in this case that watch primetime television, and point them to your local television news. That's pretty simple, isn't it? That's what this was all about. And in order to do that, we had to think about the methodology that we were going to use. And what we did was we actually did a national sample that focused on very specific promotions that, Jim, you guys collected through Promax and Promax's help and stations' help.
Right. Stations were kind enough to loan us their material because we had to have examples to show to viewers. And we won't be able to show them all in this presentation. We have 40 minutes to lay it out to you. But the key findings we will show you. And we're going to place all of this material from today on a website that we'll tell you more about at the end, magidmarketingworks.com, and it'll be on PromaxBDA.org as well. So you don't have to take a lot of notes. The presentation will be out there. But there's going to be so much more depth as we roll it out over the coming weeks.
Yeah, Jim said it best. And those of you that know me know it's hard for me to say hello in 40 minutes, but I will try to get through this as quickly as possible to get you the key findings so you can walk away, as Jim says, with perhaps a new filter, a new way of looking at how to evaluate, how to decide what to promote, and how effective it's likely to be. The way we did this is an online survey. You guys are all very familiar with all of that, where we actually were able to show people television spots. They saw Facebook posts. They got to see all kinds of alerts and push alerts and all of that. So we were able to get an assessment as to how well these motivated them to watch. We used, I'm just going to get a little researchese for just a minute, because we used two measures that really seem to be really effective in helping us understand the power of these promotions in doing the job of pointing them to local news. The first one is the PPI. A lot of you know that have worked with us before, the Magid company before. It's a simple index that is kind of a power index that overall looks at how much clout the promotional effort has in pointing people to, in this case, local television news. And as you move through here, we won't go through this again. We're going to give you the power index for all the spots that we tested. But keep in mind that anything that hits a power index of 50 or greater that's rock star stuff. That is really, really strong. In the 40s is good, 30s is not bad, but a 50 is terrific. We also used the likely to watch index. This is just kind of a net index that's weighted against the other questions with regard to how likely the person really would be to take a look, to actually go and say, yep, I've seen that, now I think I ought to take a look. So we'll be using those two measures throughout this presentation so you get an idea of how these spots stacked up. And I think I should say, we also ask a lot of qualitative questions in the survey, a lot of open-end questions. We took a lot of time to go through all of those qualitative answers to try to tease out the whys that people had as to what they said. So we'll also give you an idea not only of like, well, that spot was great, but we can break it down for you and pretty much tell you what the deal is, why it motivated people to watch local news.
So across all platforms, we discovered that people are using local or getting their local news and weather information as you would expect. You all see it in your mobile page views and online page views continuing to grow. There are lots of sources for local news, and if you're not in there, you're probably not sitting in this room, but so we tested them all, and people said, yep, use them all, find a way to get local news on all of them.
Yeah, this was pretty cool. We were able to ask a few questions before we actually dove into letting people look at actual promotional efforts. And just to get kind of an idea of how they were, as Jim said, were using the various platforms. Now get this is just not, I use Facebook. I used Twitter. This is very specific. The question was, how frequently, Monday through Friday, do you use these platforms during prime time to get local news, weather, and information? So it's not just general usage, it's very well focused to the consumption of local news, weather, information during prime time. We tested all the platforms, and they really tested pretty neat. Let's go through these real quick. TV is still rocking with 57% 5-day-a-week frequency in prime time. For those of you that do local television news research and you look at frequency of viewing of 11 or 10 o'clock newscasts, you've kind of seen that number in that 50s before. But this is all the way through prime time. Then close behind television was online. This is one of the best efforts that we've seen online do. It basically ties television in terms of consumption of news and information during prime time. And then next, mobile at almost 40%. I guess you need to be in mobile, right? Okay. And then next, Facebook. But again, a good testing here for Facebook at 31%. And then we did Twitter, and it has not typically tested in the double digits in the past, and it moved to 15. It's moving fast, and it moved to 15%. So although it is far behind the other platforms in terms of use in news and information, it's a player, and so Twitter's for real.
This one really surprised us. Yep.
Yeah. So, as we looked at all the platforms, we asked the question, how frequently do you actually go to a local newscast because of something you've seen? This is at the heart of the matter, isn't it? And it was pretty good. For TV, 52% said, I at least occasionally end up watching a local television newscast because something I saw on television. It's 44% for Facebook, it's 37% for a digital ad, and a 34% for push alerts. All of those are wildly effective. So you're talking about all of these platforms able to push people to local television news. They do have that ability.
So great data points there, great takeaways, and it really is. It's more and more, I know, on the marketing side of the business you all are facing. How do I meld the great data points and the creative abilities of your particular staffs? And because it's the art and science where it comes together that you really attract viewers. And these data points can show you it's worth your time to customize those messages.
And we ask why. We ask the open-end question. This is pretty important here, very, very critical. It's at the heart of where we're headed through the rest of the presentation. Because if you go through all of what these people said, and by the way, I tell you, regardless of platform, regardless of whether we're talking television or Facebook or Twitter or alerts or ads online, these three buckets appeared as reasons why they go. The first, and these are kind of rank ordered, the first was clear value. I'll talk about that in just a moment. The second was we call newsworthiness, and the third was brand fit. Now let me talk a little bit about this before we go on to the next one.
Oh,
yeah, not so fast. There we go. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about value, because with value, there seem to be three elements of value. And it's pretty important that you get these three. I guess there's four, and that would be no value. No value, what would be the right word? Sucks. Right.
Sucks.
Okay.
Don't run that.
No value sucks, okay? So there's three other levels of value. The first we call direct value. Now this comes from an analysis of the open-end questions that we ask in the survey. Direct value. Direct value is pretty easy. They look at a promo and they go like, oh, if I don't watch, I'll die. Okay, they get that. Okay, that's direct value. Okay, get it. The second was indirect value with the potential of being direct. That's like, oh, those poor people. I wonder if that could happen to me. Yeah. So it's indirect value initially, but the question is, I wonder if that could happen to me. And it doesn't all have to be negative. It could be, wow, those lucky people. Wow, that's cool. I wonder if I could be one of them. Then the third was just indirect value. To me, this was one of the more interesting ones, because what people said was, I might see something that I'm not interested in, that I don't see the value particularly to me, directly or even indirectly. Just don't get it. But I see the value, and I see the value to other people. That fact seemed to lift their interest in watching. So even if it wasn't directly tagged to them, the fact that they did get the fact that there was value there helped tremendously. So as you look at your promotional efforts, you have to analyze them in terms of that filter of direct value, indirect value with potential direct value, and indirect value. Because it's one of those three has to be there. And in the spots that we tested, all of them do exceptionally well.
But if you don't have them, not so fast, because viewers also use those messages for something else.
Yeah. In fact, this is the double-edged sword. Yes, you saw that slide about how these efforts, these promotional efforts, will point people to your local newscast, but they also said they are often used, occasionally used, to decide not to watch. 25% say they see a promo on television and they go like, well, that's good, I don't need to watch tonight. It's about even across all platforms.
Those are nights you're being kind to viewers and saying, oh, I don't have to stay up. It's not, not worth my time.
Could be a number of reasons why they're not interested, they don't see the value, or it's promoted and they think they already know it, and so they don't watch. But you just have to remember that there's the downside of all your promotional efforts, and particularly when value is not there, it's not clear, that's when you have the most trouble.
So recapping what Dick was talking about, these are the key points viewers told us, broken out on value.
Right, and we covered the value thing pretty well. The other two that are up here are newsworthy. What that meant when we looked at the open ends was pretty easy. It meant new. It's got to be new. They do insinuate that it has to be new with importance, but I wasn't too concerned about that if you pass the first filter of value. If you pass the first filter of value, then the next filter of new should fall in place. And then finally, the brand fit. This was interesting. We tested these spots in markets all around the country. So it wasn't like they were familiar with these stations. They didn't know the station's brand. What brand fit meant was that in the spots that came to the top, the spots that really worked, the respondent said, you know, it's very clear to me what that station is about, what their deal is. And so that clarity of brand in the spot seemed to be very important as a decision maker as to whether or not they were going to actually watch the local newscast or not.
So as we set out, again, 14 promos were tested, along with other messages we'll get to in a few minutes. And we're going to show you a few of them here coming up. 2 of them, Dick talked about the PPI index. 2 of them broke through the 50-point mark. And we'll show those to you. 2 spots were in the great category, and we will show you a sample of that. That's the 40 to peaking at 50, right, Dick?
Yeah.
And then 2 were strong, sort of in the 30 to 40 range. Still, not shabby. Great viewer attraction and interest.
This was great for me. I test a lot of promotions, and not all of them test like this, okay? These efforts really they were great. And you're going to see how they fall in line, I think, with that whole idea of value, newsworthiness, new, and brand fit.
And the thing is, people did not send us or share with us clunkers. So nobody fell in the negatives. There were a lot of great performing spots. What we're going to show you are some examples of how you can take this information and run with it. So let's move on.
Okay, this first spot, this is the PPI and the likelihood to watch. Those numbers rock. That's over half the people basically saying, I love this spot. This is, and it's built around the idea of value. They saw value in this spot, almost at 60%. Again, anything in that 50% or higher range is a killer number. They got 60. Specifics, they understood the very specific points of what the value was. That is a failure of some spots. They're not specific enough. And then finally, they don't tie it to the station. It's not tied directly to or tagged to the station. You've got to watch us in order to see this story that has this value. Okay.
Why did you drink, and I can tell you it's more than one, and apparently smoke pot when you then get behind the wheel of your fire department vehicle?
I don't think I did. Excuse me 1 second.
No, like you say, I can show it to you just so we can refresh your memory here. This is you smoking what looks to be pot. So why don't we just talk honestly about what happened up there?
That worked.
Yeah, that's when you're going to sweat on the other side of that table.
That worked.
They nailed it. So congratulations. Over in down in Washington, D.C., or over in Washington, D.C., they had a pretty good work there, too. The folks at WJLA shared a spot with us that showcased school buses that were running red lights. You can see the numbers here as on the scale, again, above the 50 mark.
And then it's all built around the specific value. I always look at this value number and the specifics because when those numbers go down, the power index just dissolves. So that spot, these first 2 spots, if you think about it, anybody that saw those in prime time, you had an opportunity to point about 1/3 of those people to this newscast, to those newscasts. That's pretty remarkable. Let's take a look at it.
Local school bus drivers busted running red light and speed cameras again.
Shocking.
And again.
It's inexcusable.
And again.
I don't think a lot of people know about this.
They know now, thanks to 7 on Your Side.
Plus, we found a stack of tickets that went unpaid for years.
We had some that fell through the cracks.
Are these drivers still behind the wheel? And who's paying the tickets? ABC 7 I-Team investigates school busted on camera. Tonight on ABC 7 News at 11.
They're pretty clear that if you don't watch it on that television station, you're not going to see this. It is pretty clear, too, that as we went through all of these spots, the ones that did test the best, these that you see and we'll see in just a moment, all the commonality was probably centered around investigative and enterprise. Because it was clear, very clear to the person, the respondent, that this was a special effort that was made by the station, and only that station, to attack this particular problem.
So styles differ from station to station. When you advocate for viewers, they also take on different styles. We saw in the first one a little more calmness from the reporter and drilling through with the content. On the second one, we saw the more of a data dump and sneaky sneak hidden camera things. This one is anchor and reporter involvement. If you have a great anchor or reporter who can get involved in the story, it also magnifies its value.
Yeah, very strong power index, and the reason to watch again is a third of the people that saw this has said, I'll take a look.
And the thing from Columbus here that really was intriguing for us, and we wanted to see how people responded to it, clearly they did well.
Local electricians short-circuited.
Do they have tools?
Contractors and major companies put to the test.
What's the problem here?
The ABC 6 News investigators create a simple electrical problem to shed light on who would spot the easy fix
Why didn't you check that in the first place?
and who would bill us for repairs that experts said we didn't need.
Want to charge you $100 for a bad outlet? The outlet's not bad, sir.
Tonight at 11, ABC 6 News turns the lights out on local electricians misdiagnosing costly repairs.
So different kind of involvement there, different kind of approach, but still the viewers saw value in it.
And as you watch these, Jim's point about the difference in the style, even the tone, the style and tone, our hypothesis going into this was that we would find really significant differences in the power index and the value index related to style and tone. And quite frankly, we didn't. The spots that really made it clear what that value, direct or indirect, was to the viewer, really made it clear that this was something new, really made it clear that this station was the only station on the planet that was engaged in this. Regardless of the container it was put in, the style, it worked. Now, clearly style matters, right? And I think that what my takeaway with, what kind of style should we use, I came to this conclusion. It was like, no matter what we do with regard to how the style of our promotion, the intent is to reinforce those 3 points of value, new, and tag to the station. So I think this demonstrates the various styles. They're different, but they all accomplish the goal of clarity of value, of what was new about this, and the fact that there was only this station that did it. Those are the spots that worked.
And that doesn't mean that everything has to be a topical tune in tonight at 11 or something that is specifically driven to that. It certainly helps. Here's an example we tested among the 14 spots that was a little different from Colorado Springs. And you can see it was proof of brand spot, which many people produce, still had value for viewers.
Yeah, it did. It's not as strong as the direct topical, if you will, that's focused on the investigative, but those are really strong numbers. 45 and a 30 is at the top of the list. And again, able to discern the specific value for each of the 3 things that we discussed.
My mother-in-law's dog had gotten loose from the training and ran inside the barn, so I went after him. I discovered over a dozen tarps with dead bodies of horses.
We just walked into a graveyard over here.
They just let it decompose while 10 other horses are walking around. They don't have food, they don't have water. And that's why I called you guys out here. I want something done.
And heart-tugging way they retold that story made shelf life really extend for this particular proof of brand spot. And one of the things we'll be putting out on the websites is we also had online trace real-time testing with each of these spots. And when you see that on the website, you'll notice there was a little dip. All these spots that we tested had upward trajectory as the audience was accepting them more. You'll notice in this one, when the carcasses were shown more openly there at the end, a little bit of a dip, just slightly, but when the person came back and said, I want something done, and the station was there for her, the trajectory built back forward, and you'll see that on the website when
this spot did exceptionally well. I want to specifically point out where it really did its job. It did its job in tying the station's coverage to their brand value, to their promise, their brand promise. And if you read the verbatims, they are loaded with responses like, boy, I get what that station is all about, watching out for the viewer, advocate for the viewer. They can call that station and that station will respond. That was a killer spot in terms of reinforcing the brand of the station, the brand value of the station.
So then on to digital and Facebook. We tested some of the same types of, some of the same stories across various platforms to see if you're creating a campaign, can you get lift across those platforms and benefit your brand long term? Tested 8 of them, and you'll see not as strong as the TV promos,
and we would expect that they would not be.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But we'll show you some examples here. But it continues to be a growing and an effective tool for your marketing.
Yeah, I mean, to get a 43 and a 27, in other words, you get a little over a quarter of the people that were exposed to this this Facebook post, and they went like, yeah, I think I'll watch. Everybody in this room would take that number, okay, of the power of pointing those people to your local newscast. And the overall index is in the 40s, so it did really well.
And again, you can see this on the website, but this has a lot of the key elements that you look for in a post that breaks through for viewers. Specifics, great brand recognition, and the element that ties back into the TV promo. So it does have that cumulative effect. Great reporter mention in here, Josie Stearman out there on the case. The thing that I skipped by it, but the lift from shares and comments and likes really big on that particular post.
Yeah, the commonality with all of those messages that you send to viewers, Facebook, Twitter, alerts. Well, the one common thing that we found in this study, whenever there was an attachment to a specific individual, or a specific individual actually made the post, okay, the lift, it went higher. So the reporter involvement, the reporter, the anchor involved in these communications to your potential viewers seems to matter. It seems to bring it closer in terms of importance to the viewer, and I say the value index goes up. This must be more valuable.
And so we wanted to know, and again, similar approach, but different type of creative. Remember, the other one had a 43 on the PPI. This one is a video embed, and you can see these numbers slightly lower, but still effective. This post, again, it's from the brand. It's not from the particular reporter.
And it didn't do quite as well.
Didn't do quite as well.
Right.
And the specifics are there in the top text, not as much detail, so people maybe felt, I don't have enough information to make an informed decision, doesn't pique my interest quite as much. The video is the big win there because it offers an opportunity to see it. Wasn't enough to overcome. This one was a one from Providence that talks about there was a convict trying to get out of prison, and this reporter was doing an undercover investigation or investigation on why he was going to be released and should that be the case.
And here they do tie it to the personality as well, pretty strong. And he's pretty well recognized in the marketplace, although, remember, that's the reason they did it in Providence. But people, where we tested this, they didn't know him at all right? He had no positive baggage at all. So just the fact that he was there, right, at talking what he did and how he did it, that tested enormously. And if you read the verbatims, again, tying the personality to the post matters.
Yep. And when, again, if you can see this one, this post came from the social media person and the brand. It included Tim White, the reporter,
right.
So that created the value, and the click-through obviously gave people a sample of what they could see, so it improved the opportunity for viewers to see exactly what am I going to get if I spend my time that I would normally maybe be sleeping or watching Netflix or whatever. Instead, I'll go to the late local news. Online ads. Lots of opportunity to reach viewers online. You saw the numbers earlier in the presentation, and clearly, if you are crafting a great message, you can reach viewers and motivate them with online advertising. We tested 6 of them, and really only one had the breakthrough qualities we've talked about earlier in the presentation.
And I would say that finding is pretty typical for what I find when I do research in local markets. I find that the online, it's clear they have terrific potential. They do. These respondents said so, all right? Yep. But they have to be crafted in such a way that if you're going to put an ad online, they have to really see the value is everything, because they will forgive the fact that you're giving them an ad, all right, if they truly understand that they really, really need to see this. In fact, it looked to me like the closer you can get to direct value in an online ad, the better, right? The further you get away from that, the more likely it's going to be that's just not going to work for me. There seems to be like a barrier, a thing you have to break through that says it's okay if we have an ad here, okay? And the reason it's okay, it's for your benefit. If they get that, you're good. But if you don't, you're not.
It doesn't mean that your creative obviously has to be a lift from your broadcast. It's better if it's not. So when we tested them, one broke through, and again, this particular one, again, we used the cross-media of this campaign because Bonnie and her team were kind enough to share them, first of all, but also we thought it'd be great to see the breadth across all media. Could people get the cumulative effect? Could we show you the cumulative effect of what people, in seeing a multiple message campaign, what it would mean to them if you craft the messages correctly? You can see big numbers here again on the PPI and LTW. So a little different approach. The flavor's still there. Still get the idea of when you're supposed to show up. Great online ad.
And the value and the integration of the personality. Okay, she was in it as well. Yeah.
Talked about that eye-catching video. Push alerts. Opportunity is knocking. What's the right way to use them? We tested a few of those as well, and we have some guidance for you on that too. I have one example to show you. Scored pretty well. We also thought, let's change it up a little bit. Yeah. School Busted is doing so well. Perhaps let's see if it's more tied to station, because we knew it was a national survey. And let's just change it up and let's tie it to some other set of call letters or whatever and see if they're interested in the content part of it. And you can clearly see they were with those scores, but it gets to the point.
Yeah, this was one that was a little tricky. Because the respondents, they seem to have a threshold here of saying, where's the BS factor? You know, is this really an alert? all right? Is this really something I need to know? So again, as I mentioned with online ads, the value proposition in these alerts are critical. The number one complaint actually overall in this survey that surfaced in the open-end questions was, I'm being bombarded by messages about stuff that's not important. And that's a turnoff. That's not a good thing. So the value proposition, again, has to be very well thought out. They can forgive you for bombarding them with messages as long as they get that it really is something that they need to know, and I would submit to you need to know now.
Right. And the challenge, obviously, is it goes back to one of the points Dick made earlier about newsworthiness. Is it new? Because you have to think about your late local news. What we keep seeing in projects is your late local news, people got up in the morning and they had 0 on their news calendar, and they started with screens and they've been on screens all day long, and we keep seeing they get more and more informed as the day goes along. So if you run a push alert that's something they are aware of or have seen throughout the day and say, come on over and watch it at 10 or 11, and there isn't a new factor to it?
Yeah, that's actually the two things that they say is, one is, I don't see any value in this at all. Or, I already know that, all right? I've already been plugged into that. So using that filter for these alerts is it is an art to figure out how you're going to communicate to them that no, you don't know everything, or no, this is new, and you need this, and here's why. And you don't have a lot of depth to do that. It's got to be very quick.
So the challenge is, what do? You get to the point, and people have to have an interest for knowing more about that topic. But what do we do now? What do we do going forward? How do you go back and take some of this information, make your promos, make your messages more powerful? Let's recap those things for them, Dick, and let's go down through so you can go back and be that genius we talked about in the beginning. TV still number one with viewers. Slight margin of lead, but you still have a very powerful tool at your disposal, and utilizing that is incredibly valuable.
And all the other platforms also
Yep.
That we tested here, I would submit to you are all, particularly if you can tie them together in a single message, like the bus story, it does seem to create a cumulative lift of interest in watching.
In any case, the first 5 seconds of that experience seems to be when people are making that decision. It's whether we're testing commercials for a local client or promos for a local TV station. People are not patient about making that decision. They see it, they make a judgment, and they're either moving on or you're creating more interest for them.
Yep.
Dick mentioned this one just a minute ago. All platforms have value. Again, you got to craft the message. These 3 key points, number one takeaways in this study, because viewers continue to reinforce that across the various platforms.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize what Jim said because the respondents said it so clear. They're on to us, all of us, with regard to this business of new. Their level of believability that when you say, hey, this is new, is not necessarily automatically in place. You actually have to proof up how what you're telling them is new. So be cautious of using the new word. I think sometimes when we do research projects, people go back, I'm sure nobody in this room does, people go back and say, hey, like the research says here are the 12 things that make people watch. Let's say here's some value, right? New, brand linkage. Let's use those words in our marketing efforts. That's not advised. What I would do is look conceptually at what we're talking about here. You know what value is, you understand what it is, and you understand why viewers are likely to operate off of that. The 3 levels of direct, indirect but potential, and indirect are critical in your thinking. You know, a spot, a story, should have to kind of earn its way in being promoted. That's kind of what the viewers are saying. It's kind of what these people are saying. Like, not every single story really kind of deserves it. And so as you look at what you're in a position of promoting, then you need to vet that story with your newsroom in terms of, hey, you know, what is the value? Let's talk about it. And I tell you, if they're at a loss for that, that's a tip-off that there's something wrong. What is the new quality of this? What's new about this? And say, also, like, how does that kind of support what we're all about? Talk about those things to the newsroom. Understand those 3 elements as it relates to what you're trying to promote. Because if they're not there, you're in trouble. So news, value, news, new, and brand linkage would be my principal filters for looking at everything that I promote, whether it's a proof of performance, whether it is an image spot, whether it's a topical. I think that's the filter you're going to have to use.
I agree, and I think the role for the folks in this room is really, you have to be the viewer's advocate. You have to be in that meeting or in that discussion about the stories that are coming up on the newscast or the TSRs that you're planning for 3 weeks away. You have to use this filter and say, look, it sounds like a great news story. I just don't think it meets the bar that we want to set for our TV station to tell the viewers this is worth their time to change their habit, change their behavior, move to another channel, because when we promise something that isn't valuable, new, fit our brand, because we're not them over there, then it's a brand drag on your station for the long haul.
There are a couple of other things at when you go to the website, you will find spelled out more clearly, but that I want to make sure we get said before we run out of time here. And that is that about over 50%, about 55% of the people that qualified for this study said they had a favorite station for local news. Did you get that? And which means that they kind of have a station. Doesn't mean they always watch that station, but it means they kind of have a favorite that they go to for local news. If your promotional effort, it looked to us like, as we looked through particularly why people said they would or wouldn't watch a local newscast based on a promotional effort, that if they saw value, and if they saw that it was new, but if they questioned the linkage to the station, the specific station, they actually were motivated to go to their, not necessarily that station, but to their favorite station. So in a way, you're actually promoting the competition if you're not really careful about tying the story, tying the value, tying the newness specifically to your station. It's a critical thing to do.
It is. So it's time to stop making plans and start motivating viewers. And that means applying some of these things that you probably had a sense of, but you didn't have the numbers before, and it was great to be able to do the work. We thank Promax for getting involved in this study with us and allowing us to come here and present this morning, because it's clear across all platforms you have opportunity. You have a way to reach those viewers in a fragmenting universe. You have a way to reach those viewers and motivate them to come back to your TV station. So you can take these messages and go back and be stronger marketers on Monday and more impactful in your stations as a strategist, as a leader, as someone who is an advocate for viewers out there in your market.
And that's the ad.
So, thank you very much.